It was on this night, 1 year and 1 week ago, from the publishing of this episode, that is, that the Idaho students spent their last night on Earth at a lovely college town that turned very, very dark. So today, we're going to remember these special students and revisit that horrible, horrible night. This and more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals interviewed and participating in this show, and do not represent those of Charlie Crime Buster or Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crime Buster. Today, we're going to take time to remember the 4 precious young people who lost their lives on a cold November morning last year. But first, let me take time to welcome you to the episode. If you like what you hear, well, we ask you to go to your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a good review. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can get our weekly episodes. We also want to invite you to reach out with a shout-out. You can do that by emailing me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. There you can make suggestions. You can ask questions. You can even lodge objections. Yep, indeed, it is a safe place for you to do so. And we always love to get your ideas on future podcasts. So reach out with a shout-out, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If you would like to support the program, well, go on over to peacemakernetwork.com. There you become a badge, BADGE supporter for a couple bucks a month. You're also going to help us help first responders. You do that by becoming a part of the Peacemaker Network. I'm talking about those real heroes. Those real heroes, that run into danger instead of away from danger. We're talking about our law enforcement, first responders, and of course the brave men and women of military. Again, peacemakernetwork.com. And if you'd like to get caught up on the Charlie episodes, well, you can do that by going to charliecrimebuster.com, charliecrimebuster.com, and there you can get caught up with a whole host of podcasts. We're going to leave the links in the show notes for you. All you got to do is just reach over there and click on it, and you're already there. Now, before we get into some really dark things and visit this tragedy that happened about a year ago, we're going to take just a moment and share with you our Crazy Crook Story of the Week. It is our way of lightening the load in the dark news that sometimes we have to share. This happened up in Ohio. There was a suspected gun thief. He was arrested 2.5 years after the crime. That's right, 2.5 years after the crime, he was arrested. Now, the way he was arrested is very interesting, and it shows how crazy our thief is. His name was Robert Mullins, 23 years of age. He faces charges of burglary, theft, and safecracking. Now, police say that Mullins had been working to fix up and remodel a home on Martini Road up there back in September, a couple of years ago. Now, according to court papers, Mullins and 3 others, they broke into a large gun safe. They used an axe, a sledgehammer. Police said they stole 8 guns, including an AK-47 and an AR-15. The thieves also stole electronics. Now, altogether, when you put the stolen items that they got, it was worth nearly $9,000. Now, here's where it gets crazy. According to court papers, Mullins, he helped himself to an energy drink. I guess it gets kind of tiring stealing from others. Instead of going out and doing a job and doing it your way that you should, he decided to steal from others. And not only did he just steal those things, but he also helped himself to an energy drink. Yep, right inside the refrigerator, inside the home. And get this, that can that he helped himself to, well, it was left after the robbery. And I guess you guessed the rest of it, right? Yep, DNA. DNA was taken from it. Now, there were no hits on that DNA until it was taken from Mullins after another arrest in December. Well, a judge ordered Mullins held on $350,000 bond during his arraignment. He had been in jail since December on that arrest of arson, assault, domestic violence, criminal damaging, and domestic violence charges. Well, how he really got nabbed for this caper, though, was a crazy crook who left his energy drink, and he was caught leaving DNA behind. So, my friend, this crazy crook who left an energy drink with his DNA on it is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now to our main focus for these horrible murders. A guy by the name of Bryan Kohberger. He's the alleged killer. He's facing charges for the murder of the Idaho College students. He was arrested after the nation waited for weeks and was getting quite vocal about their doubts into the investigation. However, the chief of police and investigators, well, they were keeping everything close to their vests. And all the time, they were putting together the evidence to catch this killer and bring him to justice. Now, Bryan Kohberger, he's described by such as a former friend by the name of Lee. We get this from some of the articles that have been written about him. According to Lee, he had something about him that seemed a little quote-unquote off. That's what Lee would write about. He said, and as I was trying to better my own social standing, as I was at the time a bit of a social outcast myself because of my autism, he said I didn't really want to associate myself with him. He went on to say that Bryan seemed to waver between emotionlessness and fury, even under the best of circumstances. Then he went on to say, but rejection, get this, rejection could make him belligerent. According to Lee, when they were about 13, he told Bryan the friendship was over, and in response, well, Bryan attacked Lee. He pinned me because he was very heavy, overweight. I was chubby myself, but he was probably 50-plus pounds heavier than me. Well, I guess it was. Maybe Bryan thought that diet would help him out a little bit and also cure something that he called visual snow syndrome. That's a disorder in which vision is clouded by white dots resembling TV static. For a number of years, Bryan, or at least someone who shares his photograph, birth date, and email, well, he recorded a journey into VSS. And here is what he said on a message board. Many of those people believe that these were his words from him. Now, however, most of those posts have been recently removed. But here's what he did post. I am 15 in 21 days, and I don't want to wish I'm dead because of this horrible thing. Then he says something major is wrong with me. I am just a blank soul. I used to be a spelling bee champion. My doctor put me on every medication, and it made me crazy. I also feel as if I'm not there, completely depersonalized mentally. I feel like my life is a movie. I have delusions of grandeur, poor social skills, no emotion. I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse. Everybody pretty much hates me. I am an asshole. I broke my table for no reason. I find no joy in life. I simply don't want to live anymore. Well, my friend, those are some of the writings that he allegedly wrote very early in his life. Now, however, while we must learn a little bit about this alleged killer, this is not about him. This is about the precious students who spent the last night on Earth in a college town. Around 8:57 p.m. local time, on this college town, November the 12th, Kaylee Concave, she posted for the last time on Instagram. It was a picture. You've probably seen it all over the magazines and all over the media and online. It was a picture of herself and 3 other slain students standing together, arm in arm, on porch of a house. Now, the 2 other roommates, Dylan and Bethany, they lived at that home with Mogan, Concaves, and Carnolo on King Road. They're also in the photo, the other 2 house guests. She went on to say, one lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. That's what she wrote in the caption. That night, Ethan and Xana, they went to a party together on a university campus. Madison and Kaylee, they went to a bar in town. And come to find out, my friend, she was not that lucky, especially in the early hours of the next day. So on today's episode, we honor these slain students. It's important to get to know them for who they are rather than just see them as victims. Here is what we pick up about them from those people who knew them and loved them. You see, about the same time that Brian, the alleged killer, was finishing high school back in 2013, well, Brian was finishing high school. Well, these other two young ladies by the name of Maddie and Kaylee, well, they were starting a lifelong, though short, friendship. They had met that year as sixth graders in Charter Academy, there where Maddie's mom managed a hotel. Now, visitors, they would all come to her hotel. They liked to parasail, paddleboard, water sports. Maddie and Kaylee, they both loved the water. Kaylee even had a boat. They had listened to the same band Train. Their favorite songs, according to others, was She Never Compromises, Loves Babies and Surprises, Wears High Heels When She Exercises, Ain't That Beautiful. Those were some of their favorite songs. They even went on each other's family vacations, places like Hawaii, Mexico. Then high school approaches, and they beg their parents to let them both enroll together into a very large high school called Lake City High School. Hey, they were so close, they even got to mostly celebrate their birthdays together. Their birthdays, May the 25th, June the 8th, only 2 weeks apart. Now, not so far away, there was Xana Kernodle. Now, she was unfortunately having a very different type of childhood. While Kaylee and Maddie, while they were jumping off docks and having a good time in the water, well, this precious girl saw a landlord evicting Xana's mother, Carla Kernodle, from her apartment for a time when she was young. She also lived in Arizona. There she played kickball barefoot till the soles of her feet turned black, people said. She had brown hair, but she had a bright smile in spite the challenges of her childhood living with a mom with a drug problem. Now, her mom's housing difficulties, well, that was just one thing that she had to face and a whole bunch of things, because her mother also had a problem with meth. Xana's dad, Jeffrey, well, he also admitted in court that he used it as well. Her mother even wore an ankle monitor until Xana's birth. When Xana was 5 months old, her mother was put in jail. Again, drug charges. She was released just before Xana's first birthday, but then she was arrested on drug charges again. Now, that pattern just went on until Carla and Jeffrey divorced. Then Xana and her older sister, Jasmine, they were placed with an aunt and uncle in 2004. Now, there are other people who had problems. Even Maddie's dad also struggled with drugs and related charges. In fact, interesting enough, the court-appointed criminal defense attorney that represents Kohlberger, he had actually dealt with both families in the past. That's according to reports. Now, if you recall, there were people who suggested back at the beginning of the investigation, some people suggested that maybe their murders were perhaps tied to their parents' drug use. And one of the reasons is because they were using drugs. But again, that was only some of the vast misinformation that came out in this case all over the internet. You know, folks, I think we would all have been a lot better off if we could have adopted a saying of Maddie. Maddie was killed that night. You see, Maddie used to say, and I love this quote. She used to say, quote, "Don't let the internet rush you." That would be good advice for a lot of us, don't you think? Now, in addition to Xana and Maddie and those that we've already mentioned, there's another young man who was also killed that night. His name was Ethan. He was Xana's boyfriend. And about a week before Ethan died, his parents, Stacy and Jim, well, they drove to the University of Idaho for Parents' Weekend. Now, Ethan, he was the oldest. He was born a few moments ahead of Mazzie and Hunter. They were all triplets. Now, Ethan and Hunter were also a part of the same sorority there at school. You see, Stacy and Jim, this is according to reports, they were just thrilled to see their little babies now settled into student lives. In fact, on their drive back home that day, they said this: "We've done it. We've literally done it as parents. We've created 3 incredible humans that will go on and have something great to offer the world." Sadly, they could not have guessed that that weekend would be the last time they ever saw Ethan. Now we're going to get to the night of these horrible, horrible murders in a moment. But first, let's take a moment to be informed about a crime that you can do something about. You see, my friend, we can't do anything to prevent what happened to these precious students on that cold November night. But we can be alert to another crime that is ruining lives and putting young lives in danger. Here, my friend, is our producer, James Buckland, with a Charlie Alert brief moment.
Thank you, Charlie Crambuster. Just this week, the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs released the human trafficking data collections activities for 2023. Now, this report describes the Bureau of Justice Statistics activities during 2022 and 2023 to collect data and report on human trafficking as required by the Combat Human Trafficking Act of 2015. Now, this report details ongoing and completed efforts to measure and analyze the nationwide incident of human trafficking, to describe characteristics of human trafficking victims and offenders, and to describe criminal justice responses to human trafficking offenses. The report provides information on human trafficking suspects referred to and prosecuted by U.S. attorneys, human trafficking defendants convicted and sentenced to federal prison, and admissions to state prison for human trafficking. Here's the highlights. A total of 2,027 persons were referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office for human trafficking offenses in the fiscal year 2021, a 49% increase from the 1,360 persons referred to in the year 2011. The number of persons prosecuted for human trafficking more than doubled from 2011 to 2021, 729 persons to 1,672 persons respectively. Of the 1,197 defendants charged in federal court for human trafficking offenses in the fiscal year 2021, 92% were male and 60% were white. Of the 201 defendants charged with peonage, slavery, forced labor, and sex trafficking in the fiscal year 2021, 77% were male and 58% were black. At year-end 2021, 1,657 persons were in the custody of a state prison serving a sentence for human trafficking offenses. If you would like more information about the Bureau of Justice Statistics, please reach out to them at bjs.ojp.gov. That's bjs.ojp.gov.
Thank you, James, for reminding us of those startling statistics. If you know somebody that may be a victim of human trafficking, if you see something, say something. It is important. Lives can be saved. Now back to our main focus. On the night of the murders, Ethan and Xana, they attended a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity. Now the roommate's house, you could actually see it in the distance from that fraternity. While Kaylee and Madison there, they visited the Corner Club bar, and then they got food from a nearby grub truck. Now Moscow, Idaho has formerly been called Paradise. It wasn't just safe, it was also one with history. Some people said there were some unusual happenings with some eccentric people looking around, but nothing violent. And by 2022, it remained the sort of place where even on Main Street you could always find a parking place. Students, could be seen all around town, and you could see them walking around with the college colors on their jerseys or on their shirts and on their polos, and also the key lanyards hanging from their necks. Hey, even when snow turns to slush down there, citizens are so courteous that they put out signs and they'll say, "Warn people, giant puddle ahead." In 2021, get this, there were 0 reported cases of fondling, gambling, prostitution, or animal cruelty. The 911 calls, they were usually about noise complaints, stray animals, public intoxication. In fact, in the days before November 13th, 2022, The docket even featured a report on the odor of marijuana. Another person called and said they lost a debit card. 7 years. 7 years had passed without one single homicide. But my friend, that changed on November the 13th last year. Now, November the 12th, well, Maddie and Kaylee, they were probably putting on their makeup, getting ready to go out. They had adored each other for nearly a decade now. And there was still a team there at the University of Idaho while they lived off campus with 3 other girls in a 6-bedroom house at the intersection of King and Queen Roads. Now, living off the campus, that meant that Kaylee and Maddie and their housemates, well, they were free to throw all kinds of parties, and boy, party they did. They threw a bunch of them, at least according to their neighbors. In fact, somebody described it as the house like a lantern, lit up from within, brimming with energy. All kinds of music and laughter. Now, what is both interesting and tragic at the same time is that Kaylee, which some people believe to be the main target of the alleged killer that night, she would not have even been there had she not returned to Moscow that day. And she returned there to show Maddie, her friend, she wanted to show her new car, which was a gray Range Rover. You see, Kaylee had taken a new job at a marketing firm in Austin, Texas. She was supposed to start it in February. You know, both her and Maddie, they were hard workers. They worked extra jobs and saved their money. Maddie had made the dean's list. She had been earning her own money since she started cleaning her mom's hotel as a kid. Her personal goal? Well, she wanted to be a millionaire. One person says this about their friendship on that night, and I'm going to quote this. Quote, Kaylee's move to Texas would signify a turning point in the girls' friendship. That night, as they prepared to go out, it perhaps occurred to them, with a spark of deep feeling, that they had spent half their lives doing everything together. Birthdays, graduations, years watching each other grow, watching them fall in love. It would have perhaps been totally out of their mind for them to think that later that night, they who had done so much together would also die together, side by side, until the end. Now, just a little ways from that house, Xana, the other victim, she entered the bright blue Sigma Chi frat house with her first ever boyfriend. That's our 20-year-old Ethan Chaplin. Now, while things may not have been going so good with Xana's mom, she had once again been arrested, this time with possession for intent. Well, things for Xana was going good. One of her favorite songs motivated her. It had the motto, live for each second without hesitation. Live for each second without hesitation. And boy, she did. She loved bunny rabbits. She loved glitter. And that home was so much full of fun. You see, Xana was the only one of her housemates with brown hair. That's right, brown hair. She said, that's okay. Brunette girls are good for the soul. She had strong opinions, but she was also willing to admit that she's learning. She publicly announced, she said, I have no idea what I'm doing. She didn't care to say it. She just didn't know. But there's one thing she did know. She loved Ethan. He was described as kind, hilarious, fun. On a roller coaster ride, he'd flash his nipples as the camera flashed. Sometimes even dressed up like a hot dog. Other times he burst out singing. Now, to understand Ethan, all anybody really needed to know, according to some people, was that he was a tulip farmer. A gardener, fellow gardener, described his soul as 100% pure. Now, Ethan had even invited Xana to his vacation house there in Priest Lake, Idaho, last summer. They spent a lot of time with Ethan's brother and nephew, who loved to call Xana Banana. Every day Ethan rushed home from his summer job as a waiter to see Banana. They made each other laugh with inside jokes. They adored each other. And these two, well, they kicked their last night off on Earth there in that college town at Sigma Chi. Where the house dog, well, he was a husky named Bolt. Now, Xana's younger housemate, Bethany, a member of Xana and Maddie's sorority, she was also at Sigma Chi that night. Bethany would later say that Ethan and Xana's relationship, well, they had such a relationship that it made her believe in love. She was one of the roommates, Bethany, that was not killed that night. Now, the corner club that the girls went to, it was really a really neat club. It was founded in 1948, kind of a town place where local mechanics would hang out with professors, all kinds of people. And the bouncer, well, he was so hard on fake IDs that when students finally gained entry upon their actual 21st birthday, well, you felt like you really belonged because you got there and you were able to get in there. Every year, the homecoming king and queen, they would stand atop the bar. They would sing a fight song. And right along with the men's sports stuff all over the place, the owner really would display a lot about the college. It was the college place to go. Now, customers like Kaylee and Madeline, they could feel comfortable and safe there. Because if they would tell the employee or the owner or the bouncer, this guy's not making me feel good, or this guy did this or this guy did that, well, they knew that that matter would be addressed. Now, Kaylee, she was recently single. Maddie was almost 2 years into her first romance. Her boyfriend Jake adored her, loved how much she loved being comfy. She also managed to find a fuzzy blanket. She'd pop off her shoes, had fuzzy socks. He loved how whenever they went places together, well, she routinely would stop to point out cute things to him. Anything pink or anything tiny. Well, Maddie and Kaylee, they went to that corner club that was the hangout around town around 10 p.m. on that Saturday, about 6 hours before the murders. They were the flat screen TVs, and they had all the stuff, ESPN, on the mute. Now, the college football team wasn't doing so well, though. They had, after a solid season, they had lost an embarrassing winnable game against UC Davis. Many people thought that was the worst thing that could happen that weekend, but boy, they were wrong. On November 13th, well, around 1:30 a.m., Kaylee and Maddie, well, they exited the corner club, and they went out to a food truck there. She recognized somebody, gave her one of her famous hugs. They were less than a mile from 1122 King Road, but it was cold outside, so they got him a driver. They chatted with the driver. It was a guy they already knew, small town. He picked him up before. He later said, quote, "It's not lost on me that my job was to get these girls home safe." Well, 10 minutes later, Kaylee and Madeline, they got out of the car. They went up the driveway to the house nearly 2 a.m. Ethan and Xana, they had gotten home not long before. Within the hour, Kaylee tried to call her ex-boyfriend, Jack, 7 times. They'd dated for 5 years. He was her high school sweetheart. Kaylee's family thought she would marry him, but instead she broke up with him about 3 weeks earlier. Kaylee, well, she was starting over in every way, beginning a brand new chapter. But she and Jack, they still shared a dog, a golden noodle named Murphy. Now, Kaylee's landlord had a no-pets policy, but they bent the rules a little bit and kept Murphy because he was just so cute. When the police opened Kaylee's bedroom on the day of the murder, well, they found that dog unharmed. Now, what the public knows about what happened next does not come from the girls, but actually from an affidavit. As the girls wound down and went to bed, there was a white Hyundai Elantra. It was passing back and forth in front of the house. Bethany, she slept on the first floor of the house, a sub-basement. Dylan had a bedroom on the second floor, same level. Now, maybe the person in the Electrana, maybe that white Electrana, the Hyundai, maybe he could see the lights going on and off. But then one time, the car stopped around 4 a.m., parked outside. Now, in the back of the house, there was a sliding glass. It would open into the kitchen. In the living room, there was a sign. It declared good vibes. Dylan, the roommate that wasn't killed, woke around 4 a.m. to what sounded like Kaylee playing with Murphy on the floor above the dog. Then it sounded like one of the girls said, "There's someone here." Dylan opened the bedroom but saw nothing, went back to bed. Then she heard crying coming from one of the rooms, followed by a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She opened the door again, and again she saw nothing. Then at 4:17, the dog began barking upstairs. Neighborhood cameras picked up what sounded like whimpering, followed by a loud thud. When the crying continued, Dylan opened her door for a third time. There she saw a stranger in black clothes, his face covered for his eyes. She noticed his quote-unquote bushy eyebrows. She stood there frozen when the stranger walked right past her. And all at once it was over. All the killings, the murders, in just 15 minutes. Now, what happened between the time that Dylan saw that intruder and the 911 call later, it's really unknown. But we do know this. The two surviving roommates, they woke to a horrific sight. In fact, investigators described the crime scene this way. In the kitchen, red liquid blood dripped down from the cabinets, coming from the direction of one of the third-floor bedrooms. Off the hallway lay Ethan and Xana. On the exterior of Xana's bedroom wall, more red liquid dripped down the concrete foundation. Upstairs, Maddie's body was sprawled beside Kaylee's. Investigators, they called it the worst crime scene they had ever seen. Now, some people have been puzzled about the call to police that day that was dispatched as an unconscious person, but there's a reason for that. You see, my friend, when the roommates woke up to this horrific scene of these kids slaughtered by knife, one of the surviving roommates fainted. The other hyperventilated, unable to speak clearly to the 911 operator. And based on what the operator was able to make out, the dispatcher filed the call under unconscious person. My friend, that was the last night those young people lived in a small college town. And on December 30th, in the early hours, Brian Kohlberger was arrested for these horrible, horrible murders. We've taken the time to remind you of the horrific, horrific scene and the terrible, terrible things that happened to these precious girls. And to that one young man who lost their life on that horrible, horrible cold November night. So this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, always be aware of your surroundings. You never know when evil may be lurking right around your shoulder. So until this time next time, Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. Yep, for the life you save, it could be your very own.